Hello everyone and welcome to my channel English with AK. Today we have a special guest from the United States and his name is Lucas. He is my old friend and we have been talking for more than a year now, and he is very kind, honest, modest and decent person, and he helped me a lot in my language journey. Still I'm getting help from him whenever it is required, because now he is very busy, super duper busy with his work and other stuff. So let's get started this conversation, and I will ask Lucas to introduce himself.
Yeah, so thank you so much. That was a very thoughtful intro. Um, like you said, my name is Lucas. I'm 25 years old. I live in Seattle, Washington. Been living here for about 6 months. And yeah, I graduated from university a couple years ago, majored in Spanish and social sciences. Most of my career has been in social work, so helping other people, assisting them with getting access to services that they need and improving their lives however I can.
Okay, that's great. And I forgot to mention that he knows Spanish very well. He's fluent in Spanish as well. Okay, and he's working with a lot of people because he loves social work as well. So I will ask few questions related to language learning and especially related to English, because I'm a non-native speaker and you are a native speaker. So you can better explain and elaborate all those situations and circumstances where people are in finding it difficult for themselves to improve and express themselves in the language. So my first question is how to approach a new language. Being a non-native speaker, how can you approach a new language? If and you have to tell me in detail in respect to context that suppose you are a beginner, then how to approach. Suppose you are at intermediate level, then how to approach. Suppose you are at advanced level, then how to approach.
Yeah, so I mean, I can really only speak from my own perspective because I think what you've said before, each person has their own style of learning. And so I would never want to make a broad statement and say, hey, this is how you do it.
Exactly.
But I know for me personally, every time that I start to learn a language, I like to get kind of like an overview of it. I like to just, kind of maybe watch some videos about it, just get a sense of what the language sounds like and the grammar and all of that before I make the decision to commit to it and say, this is something that I really want to pursue and learn. Because, some languages really draw my interest and others don't. So I think that's the starting point for sure. Um, there's so many different series out there. One of the best ones that I've used is like Spanish in 10 minutes a day, Portuguese in 10 minutes a day. Um, so basically with those, you dedicate just a short amount of time each day to learning the language. And I think I think that's a good place to start, to not overwhelm yourself. Um, because if you can take it in little chunks like that, you slowly build your skills over time. If you don't, unless this is like you don't have anything else going on and you can focus all your time on this. So that would be one thing. And I also think lowering your expectations and not assuming that you're gonna get this language overnight, because that's not the case. You're gonna have to put in a lot of work, a lot of time and effort, and just know that going into it. It can be a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. So don't expect. Did you want me to elaborate maybe a little bit more on like intermediate and advanced? Because I'm more
Yes,
focused.
yes, exactly. Because sometimes when I'm teaching, a lot of students, they are at intermediate level and they have this problem all the time. They are finding it difficult and they are thinking that they got stuck. Okay, they are not improving at all. So I want your suggestions that what kind of advice or what kind of suggestions that you would like to provide to all the students.
Yeah, well, I know one that I can start with. Actually, I'm Kumar, and I'm basically, you can connect with native speakers of the language that you're learning, and in turn, they help you with the language you're learning, and you help them with your native language. And I think that while it's not necessary to immerse yourself so much with native speakers, it can really accelerate your progress. I wouldn't recommend going into that if you're a very beginner, if you don't know any of the language, because
Exactly.
it's really hard to communicate there. But if you're at an intermediate level and you can find a native speaker of a language to ask questions to and practice conversation and all of that, it's incredibly useful. And it's helped me progress so much. You can attest to that, I'm sure.
Yes, yes.
Both.
Absolutely. And there's another question that all the time people are crazy, they are insane about native speaker. They would like to talk to a native speaker. I have seen that they are like running after native speaker in order to improve their language, even though they are not good at the language and they can't speak the language, but they want to speak or they want to practice with native speaker. As you said that if you are at intermediate level, it would be much better for you to have a conversation with the native speakers and ask different types of questions so that you can improve immediately, as well as you can understand and acquire the language fast if you are at intermediate level. Okay, so my question is that what is the main difference between having a non-native speaker as a practice partner or having a native speaker as a practice partner?
So what comes to mind for me is, and I don't know if you or your viewers are going to be familiar with these terms, but there's what's called prescriptive language versus descriptive language.
Yeah.
So prescriptive is kind of the rules of a language, what you're taught in textbooks in school, how people say you're supposed to talk. And then there's descriptive, which is how people actually talk. And you'll notice that a lot of times the grammar and vocabulary and all of that does not really align between the two. So, anytime that I'm learning a language, I want to know, how do people actually say this? What is the most natural way to say something?
Exactly.
Rather than what is the most formal or, that kind of thing. So I would say that that's something to focus on for sure is when you're interacting with a native speaker, make sure to ask them, hey, is this how people actually talk? Or does this sound very formal?
Yes.
And I know you
Yes.
ask that all the time, which is great.
Yes.
Because, sure, something might be understandable or correct, but it sounds kind of off. You can tell that someone doesn't really speak the language natively. So
And
I think that would be my biggest emphasis.
yes, yes, and that's my intent as well. I would like to speak the language like a natural English speaker. Okay, I would like to sound like an organic speaker, not like what you can say, an artificial one, or like something that who is trying to translate from the native language to a target language. Because what is happening there, you are just you are not understanding the language, you are just trying to translate, you are just trying to say it in the way that people are saying it. Okay, not the, you are not opting the best way or the natural way of saying that thing. So that's the main scenario here. You need to understand that how to speak the language in a natural way, like a native speaker, what they are saying in their country, what they are saying, or what they are speaking when they are saying about the topic, about the language. Okay, because sometimes what is happening that you have no idea like what to say if the situation is like this, because these things comes under situational English. Okay, when someone is asking a question and you are not getting what he's asking, then you will like find it intimidating and challenging for yourself. Like, okay, and then you have to understand that, oh my God, that was the situation, and in that situation I need to react, I need to reply, I need to respond in that way. Okay, so right. that was a nice explanation overall. Now the next question is a very like what you can say, argumentative question, and it's all about accent. Okay, why? Because there is a battle, there's a skirmish going on across the globe about the accent, and especially if you talk about English language. Why this is happening, I don't know. Someone is saying that American accent is better, someone is saying that British accent is better, and someone is trying to follow American accent, someone is trying to follow British accent. And if I talk about myself, as I told you, or as I said earlier, that a lot of people from my country, they are saying that I have a fake accent. Okay, and all the time they are saying that why you are trying to replicate Americans, why you are trying to replicate or copy American speaker or something like that. But the problem is, I would like to know that why they are saying like that. Okay, what according to your opinion, according to your perspective, why they are saying like that, I'm trying to copy, I'm trying to like replicate Americans or something like that, even though. And the most important thing about the accent is that those people, whoever is saying that I have a fake accent, they have no idea, they have no freaking clue about an accent. If you ask them what is an accent, they have no idea. Okay, how many types of accents, they have no idea, but they are saying that I have a fake accent because they know the word fake, but they don't know the meaning. Okay, exactly, what is the meaning of an accent, or how many types of accents, or like that. So what's your opinion about my accent, or what's people they are getting the feedback, the so-called feedback about my accent? What's your opinion about that?
Well, so I want to know, is this people in India that are saying this, or is this Americans that are saying this?
No, if I'm talking to Americans, if I'm talking to people either except from my country, if I'm talking to people from different countries, there's no problem, okay, at all. They are getting everything, they are understanding everything, and I can communicate easily and effectively with all those people from across the globe. You know that I have already talked people from more than 80 to 85 countries, and there was no problem at all in order to communicate, in order to convey my messages at all. Okay, I was trying to project, I was trying to plot my ideas and thoughts, and there was no problem at all. But whenever I'm talking to people from my country, all the time they're saying that you have a fake accent. So what's your opinion about this?
No, that is really interesting. I would say, so I watch a lot of like Hindi language films, and I
Mhm.
noticed that there's a very specific accent. Indian English tends to have a very specific accent that I recognize very easily, and I've heard it from people who come to the U.S. from India, people who have Indian ancestry, and it does sound different from how you talk, because I think for you, you're really wanting to replicate and be in line with a U.S. accent, or a transit. I can't remember if you said transatlantic or US is what you
Exactly,
aim for. But
exactly.
while I understand that it's different and I hear that difference, I don't think that makes it fake at all. It doesn't make it any more or less valid. It's just you're trying to get closer to what native speakers actually sound like. Whereas I think these other people are used to a very specific variety. And, they might hear you and say, why are you talking like that? But it doesn't make sense to me to phrase it like that. It's just different. I don't attach value to either one, if that makes sense. I don't think one is good and one is bad. It's just different.
Okay, okay. All right. So if I talk about the English language, and especially that there is like a difference between two important things. The first one is rhythm and the second one is sound. So will you please elaborate the difference between rhythm of English and the sound of English? Because, in majority of cases, I would like to tell you that it's a small anecdote. I was talking to someone from the United States, and his name was Andrew. And I was asking this question, and he was like feeling like shaky and nervous when I was asking that question, that what's the difference between rhythm of English and sound of English. And he was saying like, bro, I am a native speaker, but I have no idea, I have no clue about this question. So it's better for you to ask to like someone who is a teacher or who is teaching the language, because to be honest, I have no idea about this question. So what's the real difference between rhythm of English and sound of English?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify. So I'm pretty sure on rhythm, but when you say sound, because that is such a broad word that can mean so many different things, are
Mhm.
you saying like tone? Are you saying cadence, or tonality? Are you saying like emphasis? Kind of, what do you mean by sound?
So I'm talking about in context with the what you can say, the pitch or the stress that you are trying to give on the different syllables when there's like multisyllabic words are there. So how to understand that what is sound exactly? Because as you know that if you talk about the rhythm, then in rhythm we have different things like intonation and musicality of the language, the melody of the language and other stuff. But if you talk about the sound, we have stress, we have like pitch, we have different syllables and other stuff to emphasize on. So what's your opinion about the sound and how we can understand? Because learning sound is really, really important. We know that we have different sounds in English language, and in order to pronounce all those words correctly, you need to learn all those sounds, you need to produce all those sounds. Okay, then only you can pronounce all those different words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think kind of starting with rhythm, I mean, that one is a little bit harder for me to put into words because it varies so much from language to language. I know there's some languages like even different dialects within the same language sound different. The way that people talk and for example, I study Spanish, and so a lot of people say that Colombian Spanish is very sing-songy. It sounds like they're
Yes.
singing almost like
Yes. Yes. Yes.
yo me ya, like
Yeah.
that kind of
Just like
thing. And then
song.
yeah, so that to me would fall under the category of rhythm. It's kind of like the way that people deliver what they're saying, whereas intonation is it in English at least that is going to convey meaning. In Hindi, there isn't as much emphasis on intonation. You can
Yes.
each
Yes.
almost kind of
Absolutely.
say the same. But in English, for example, record versus record, they're spelled the same, but if you put the stress of the word, so if you're holding the syllable longer, if you're saying it a little bit louder, record, that conveys that you're talking about like a disc versus record. If you're putting the emphasis on the second syllable, that's the act of recording something, like you're recording this video right now. So in
Yes.
certain languages like English, intonation actually changes the meaning of a word. And
Where,
then
whereas one is a verb, another one is a noun, right?
exactly, yeah.
Yes.
So it's important. There's so many different factors that go into how you deliver what you're saying in a language. I mean, that it's a lot to keep track of, but everything conveys meaning. It's going to vary based on your dialect and your accent. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Okay. So the next question is about feedback. A lot of people, they are really, really curious about feedback, and especially if they are learning a language or a skill. Why? Because they need to know, they would like to know from people. They need like recognition from people that, am I doing good? Am I doing great? Is it going good for me or not? Okay. So my question is, who is the best person to give you the feedback, and how can you check his competency, his credibility, his eligibility? Because if I talk about myself, I have received more than 1,000 feedback from across the globe, from native as well as non-native speaker. So my question is, who is the best person to give you feedback? Before going to answer, I would like to share an anecdote. So I met a guy, his name was Joy, and he was from the United States. So he asked me to talk about daily routine. Okay. So I said something like, I'm like an early bird and I'm waking up early in the morning or something like that. And after that, I said that instead of taking my lunch, I'm taking brunch. Okay. What he said that when you are saying brunch, it sounds like brunch. Okay. Then I said, what kind of thing is going on with, what the hell is he is talking? Because I was saying brunch, not brunch. Okay. So in few sentences, he pointed out more than a dozen mistakes. Okay. if I talk about other native speaker, I sent that recording to more than a dozen native speaker and they pointed out only 2 mistakes, but he was pointing out more than a dozen mistakes. So I would like to know that even though he was a native speaker, there was no doubt at all. Okay, but the question is, who is the best person to give you the feedback?
Yeah, so it's really interesting that you bring that up because when I was sitting here thinking of a response, I was thinking, someone that gives you a lot of details is great. But I think it goes the other way too. You want it to be balanced. You don't want someone who's going to pick apart every single thing and, be discouraging. You want someone that's going to find the main errors and, tell you what you're doing well so that you can be inspired to improve, I think. And so I would say that's the first thing, is finding someone who, when they give you feedback, you feel motivated to keep learning rather than just discouraged. I would also say, like I was talking about earlier, if someone just says, "Oh, you're doing great," or not so good," and they don't give you any details or examples, don't listen to that feedback. You want someone who's going to be very specific with you. I've definitely had people who are just, I'll give you a little anecdote too. I was on a job interview panel and we were interviewing for bilingual candidates. So we had to ask some of the questions in English and some in Spanish. And there was this girl that came in to interview. I could tell she was very nervous, but her Spanish was not good at all. I mean, she could barely string together sentences, just really not good. So after she left, one of the other guys on the interview panel was like, "Yeah, her Spanish was good." And it I think over time you start to gain an intuition about who you can trust and who maybe you shouldn't listen to as much. And I could tell in that moment, like, he's just being polite. That the Spanish was not good. So if someone's just telling you what you want to hear and not being honest with you, they're probably also not giving you good advice.
All right.
Yeah.
That was nonsensical. Okay, so my next question is about over enunciation. Okay, so I met another guy, his name was Scott, and he was from the United States. So when I was recording myself, he said like, Amit, there is some problem. Sometimes what you are doing, you are over enunciating. And like, I was just trying to get rid of that over enunciation. But the problem is he was not explaining that over enunciation, because if you won't explain what is over enunciation, how would I know? Okay, so I would like to know from you that what is over enunciation and how can I get rid of someone? If someone is like struggling with over enunciation, then how can he overcome that problem?
Yeah, I think over enunciation is, again, such a broad concept that can mean so many different things that it's hard to say specifically what he was referring to. And I think that's what you're saying, is he wasn't being specific enough.
Exactly.
Like, I can think of a few examples, like, the word practically. As a native speaker, I don't say, even though it's spelled ALLY, I don't say practically, I say practically.
Exactly.
You shorten it, it's 3
Yes,
syllables.
yes. Okay.
So I think things like that, maybe that's what he was referring to, like you're saying the words as they're spelled and pronouncing each syllable rather than combining them. But, again, it's hard to tell what he meant. So I think really the best thing you can do is continue to get all that language input, listen to podcasts, watch news shows, talk to people, and you kind of get a sense over time of how people say things. And you can use that input to guide how you're saying things. But, it's hard to say in this case what he was.
All right, all right. All right. So the next question is about pronunciation. Okay. My students, they are from different countries. Okay. And all the time they have the same problem, the same issue with the pronunciation. They are quite good. They are like improving. They are improving a little by a little, a bit by a bit. But when it comes to pronounce all those words, they're having problem with different sounds. Sometimes they are missing D, sometimes they are missing T, sometimes they're missing R, and it's going to be really, really challenging for them. And if you are not pronouncing all those words correctly, then what is happening with you? Sometimes you are pronouncing another word, okay, whose meaning is different, okay, and you will sound like a stupid, you will sound like a duffer, okay. And this is like going in your subconscious mind when you are not pronouncing all those words correctly. Okay, so I would like to know that how to improve the pronunciation if someone is like at intermediate level, who is just learning the language, who can speak the language, but it's really, really challenging and daunting for them to pronounce all those words correctly. So what's your opinion about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to push back a little bit on what you said. I think that people are made to feel stupid when they make mistakes, but it doesn't mean they are stupid.
Exactly.
It's because, well, I know I can speak for the US. A lot of times people are not very nice about people who don't speak English natively. They might get impatient. They might, make fun of their language. But to me, I just see someone who's trying to learn English, and I think that's great. Like, I'm so glad they're trying, and, I want to encourage that. So I think for me, it's not, I don't look at them as stupid, but I can understand from personal experience too, having learned a language, it does make you, it makes you feel that way because you want to be correct when you're speaking. So with all of that in mind, I do think it is important to get, close enough in pronunciation, but recognize that if you are learning a language later in life, you're probably never going to get 100% to sounding like a native speaker. It's just physiologically, it doesn't work that way.
Absolutely
So,
correct.
yeah,
Absolutely
so
correct.
give yourself a little grace and understand that you're never going to be perfect, but you can keep striving towards getting that pronunciation. There's so many resources out there. There's websites where you can physically see, they show you a chart of what the mouth looks like and what the tongue is doing and the teeth are doing. So for people, let's say a certain sound doesn't exist in your language, you can go to these resources and really practice and get as close as you possibly can to making those sounds.
Right. That was a great explanation. Okay, again. So now the next question is, sometimes like people have a doubt, or like they have a doubt about the communication. And what is that doubt is, they know, or they consider that if you are fluent in a language, it means you are a good communicator. So my question is that being fluent in a language and like being an effective and eloquent and an exceptional communicator, is there any relation between being an effective communicator and being an master in language? What would you like to say about this?
That is a really interesting question, and I've honestly never thought about that. So since I haven't really like studied linguistics professionally or academically, I don't know if I can really answer that. But I do think it would be interesting to consider whether someone speaks multiple languages natively, like if they grew up bilingual, or if they're learning a language later in life, because I think that would probably make a difference. Like, if you're, let's say you grew up speaking English and Spanish in the home, just because you know two languages doesn't mean you're going to be a good communicator necessarily. But if you are gifted in languages and you're learning different grammar and stuff and really pulling different pieces from different languages, I think it's going to improve your skills in communication for sure, because you see how different languages and different cultures communicate. But overall, I'm not quite sure. What do you think?
See, if you talk about me or if you talk about my opinion about communication, I think that communication is a very, very vast topic. Okay. And we are not competent enough to discuss anything about that. Okay. Why? Because we believe that we know the language. We have a reasonable command over the language and we know how to speak the language. We know how to interact with the language. But communication is not about language or speaking the language in like fluently. If you even if you are proficient in the language, you are not a great communicator at all. I know that. Okay, why? Because I have seen that people they are quite good. Okay, I have a friend, he's from India only. Okay, and his English is way better than mine and way better than a native speaker, I must say. Okay, why? Because he worked a lot. He has been working on his language for more than 13 years. Okay, and his
Wow.
English is like absolutely great, absolutely great. There, like if you talk to him, you will feel like I am talking to a native speaker, or like a better than a native speaker, something like that. But if you ask him to convince someone in the language, he is going to fail. There will be a big failure. Why? Because he's not a great communicator. He knows the language. He has a reasonable command over the language, but he doesn't know how to interact with people, what to ask, how to ask, what to say, what not to say, how much to say, where to say. All these things comes under communication. Your communication is not only about talking or speaking the language. It's way above than all those stuff. Like when you are asking the question, you need to know what to ask, how to ask. I have met a lot of people, that okay, and I have seen that people are terrible at communication. Okay, they are not good at all. When you are just talking to people like normal greetings, and after that they are asking questions like, what's your religion,
Hmm.
how much you are earning, these are like communication killers. Okay, please don't ask these type of questions. Okay, I'm like requesting all of you. Okay, people will block you immediately if you ask these type of questions, because these type of questions are called communication killers. Okay, communication is all about negotiation, persuasion, and like convincing people. You need to understand, you need to know the situation with whom you are talking, what do you have to talk, because there's a difference between personal talk and professional talk. And that's what communication is, like a very vast topic. That's why I said that we are not competent enough to talk about this topic. Okay, we need to learn, and communication is like a lifelong process. You need to learn every day. We are learning whenever you are talking to people, whenever you are having a conversation with people. We are learning how to communicate. We are learning what to ask, how to ask. When someone is blocking you, you need to understand why he is blocking me, why she is blocking me. Okay, please don't repeat the same mistake again and again, because people have a very, very bad habit. Okay, they are like repeating same mistakes again and again and again. So you have to understand the situation. Okay, communication is a very, very vast topic. Even though we can communicate, we can say that we are communicating, but we are not an effective communicator. Okay, sometimes when I'm teaching my students and I'm asking the question, they are struggling badly. Okay, it's not like that they don't know the language, it's not like that they don't know English. Okay, they know their native language, but the problem is they don't know how to talk. They don't know what to talk, they don't know what to ask, they don't know how to ask, they don't know where to ask. That's the problem. And these all things comes under communication skills. You need to understand this is also a important skill, just like other skills that you have or that you want to learn.
Yeah, I totally agree that it's so vast that we could talk about it for days and days. I
Yeah,
mean, not only within one culture, but between different cultures, communication is very different, and different things have different meanings, and there's different social contexts, and like you were talking about earlier, knowing what to say and when to say it. I think that also depends on the culture too, and the specific group of people that you're around and the situation. I mean, there that all falls under the umbrella of communication. So I think when I think of that, it's much more than just convincing people. I mean, I think that is one aspect of it for sure, but for example, being able to communicate your feelings and how you're feeling about something to other people is a form of communication. Um, being able to listen actively and receive feedback, and yeah, there's so much to take account for.
Exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
now, my next question is, what to do or how to do it when someone is not suppose I'm trying to request a native speaker that I would like to have practice with you, or I would like to learn from you. So how can we approach that situation? How can we approach that person, irrespective of his country, irrespective of his gender? There's no problem, but how we can approach that person if I would like to approach? What would you like to say about that?
Yeah, I think this is another thing that's really going to depend on the context. So, if I'm meeting someone on an app that's specifically for language learning, that's pretty easy, I think. I mean, you
Yes.
you send them a message and you say, "Hey, do you want to help me with my English or my Hindi or whatever language it is?"
Yeah.
If you're talking about like an acquaintance or someone that you're meeting for the first time out on the street, that's probably going to really depend on the person, I would say, and kind of the context or the relationship that you have with them. I think if it's like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like if I was just meeting a coworker, right, and I know that they speak another language, I wouldn't want to put them in a position where they feel obligated or make them feel like I'm taking advantage of the fact that they speak this language natively. So I would want to make sure that I phrased it in a very specific way, I think. And I would want to make sure that they're going to get something out of it too. So I'm not just taking, because I think that's important for you to get a mutual benefit from it.
Exactly, exactly. And I would like to share an anecdote, because you know that whenever I'm talking to people, I'm just trying to have a conversation with that person. Okay, so I met a girl. She was from Philippines. Okay, and I know few Tagalog. Okay, like few words. So what happened at that time when I came to know about that she's from Philippines? So I started texting her in Tagalog. Okay, and after a few minutes of conversation, she was saying like, you grabbed my attention. Why? Because now you are speaking in my language. So I must say that when you are talking in a language, you are just trying to communicate with that person from here. Okay, that's all about your brain and mind. But when you are trying to communicate with that person in her language or in his language, it means you are just trying to connect from somewhere like in deep. Okay, and why this is happening? Because language and culture is like a very very important aspect whenever you are trying to have a conversation with people. Whenever you are using his or her language, he will or she will definitely reply. Okay, there's no problem at all. Even if there will be no more conversation later on, but you will get reply immediately. Once you started saying that, hola, ¿cómo estás? Mi nombre es Amit Kumar. Okay, so after that you will get that attention easily. Okay, now he's speaking Spanish. Oh my God. Oh, it means he must know Spanish. Okay, something like that. So you can start the conversation, and after that you can have a longer conversation. Now the next question is also about conversation, because some people are very very like bad at conversation, especially if you talk about the long conversation. They can do chit chat, no problem, but when it comes to have a long conversation for 2 hours, for 3 hours. So my question is how to do a long conversation. It doesn't matter that you are talking to that person who is a native or non-native, it doesn't matter. But the question is how to do a long conversation with anyone who is a stranger or unknown person.
Well, I have been known to ask a lot of questions. Some people say too many questions, but that's really how I like to relate to people because I'm very inquisitive by nature. I like to learn about people and, you know, understand their motivations and where they're coming from. So I ask questions all the time. If the conversation seems to be coming to an end and I want to keep going, I might, you know, follow up on something that someone has said and ask, oh, well, when was that? Or tell me more about that. Um, and I think, you know, by doing that, you're showing the other person that you're interested in them, and you're learning more and continuing that conversation. But I would also say that it can sometimes depend on the other person because
Yes.
there's some people in this world that it doesn't matter, you know, how much time we spend together. We are just so polar opposite that we're not going to find things in common to talk about, and that's okay. There's just different
Exactly.
people on the planet. So I think making sure ahead of time that you have at least something in common, a shared interest, something that you can talk about to keep the conversation going.
Yes, absolutely. And as you said that about questions and asking question is also like a paramount in a communication or like in a conversation. Sometimes what is happening that when you are asking something out of the box and like he or she is like finding it difficult or like intimidating for like answering that question, then you will face that problem. Okay, and there will be no conversation. So you have to understand that you need to choose your question wisely. You need to choose your question smartly. What to ask, you need to understand that. Okay, if you are not getting that or what to ask here and what should be or what must be my next question, then you can do some research before going to have a conversation with anyone. Because you know the most important thing about asking the question, because sometimes what is happening, people are asking close-ended question. Okay, so you don't need to ask close-ended question when when you want a long conversation. Okay, because you know I would like to tell you that I had a conversation for more than 2 hours, more than 3 hours with native speakers and non-native speakers from different countries. So why this is happening? Because all the time I'm asking open-ended questions. Okay, where you have to elaborate, where you have to explain, where you have to give your opinion, your perspective, your thoughts, okay, about that question. So in order to have a conversation, in order to have a long conversation, you need to ask open-ended questions. That is really, really important. That is like very, very critical for your conversation or for long conversation.
And do your viewers already know what that means? The difference between open and closed-ended questions?
Yes, yes, they know.
Okay.
They know. Yeah. It's simple. It's simple for them as well. When you are asking questions and those answers, like answers are coming in yes and no, it means those are close-ended questions. And when someone is asking questions and you have to explain in detail, it means those questions are coming under open-ended questions. That's it. It's simple. Okay. So and let me think about another question. Okay, so
Okay.
okay, now I would like to ask that if someone who is like struggling with vocabulary, because as you know that when you are learning a language, vocabulary is gonna play a vital role in your language learning journey or your process. So if someone is struggling with vocabulary, what's your opinion about learning vocabularies and new words and lexicons when like they are not getting that much time, they don't have that much time to spend like hours and hours to learn new words and to implement and apply in their language? So how they can learn quickly new words?
Well, I would go back to what I said earlier about really focusing on how people actually talk in real life every day on the street. That language to me is always going to be more important. And it's going to be more common too. If you're spending your time learning abstract, big, complicated words that are only used in academic contexts, sure, it might be useful sometimes, but it's not going to be as useful. So I think finding places where you can really focus on that everyday language social media even. I think if you can follow people on social media that speak that native language, you can see what language people use. You can read articles. You know, just getting that real life immersion and that language input in the modern day is, I think, so vital. As far as actually learning and memorizing the words, that I think is an individual approach. I mean, I used to make like, here I'll show you. I would write on one side of the paper the English word and the other side the Portuguese or the Spanish. You know, making flashcards, that works for some people. Other people need conversation, or other people need to listen, and you know, that part is really individualized, I think.
Mhm. Okay, that's a great explanation once again. And now we are going to end this conversation. And thanks for your time. And I would like to ask our viewers that if you like this conversation, then please share, subscribe my YouTube channel, and don't forget to comment about this conversation.